we are going out and being broadcast to all of your beautiful friends and family. And I just want to let everybody who may be watching this know exactly what we're doing here. Um, basically, Maggie has allowed me to get to know her better and allowed you guys to get to know her better. So I'm here to help her shine and let you beautiful people see the wonderful insides of her. Does that sound good, Maggie?
Sounds wonderful. Thank you, Shaun.
Awesome. No worries. Uh, so, like I said in our conversation that we just had, people who help other people get past stuff often have a transformation or often have a moment in their life where it's like, this is not working. And I would just love for you to start this in your story here with that moment for you.
Yeah, I that moment began, excuse me, when my daughter was really little. Um, when it was actually after the point where she was actually sleeping through the night. It was beyond the point when the exhaustion was supposed to be normal for new parenthood, and it actually started to get worse. And it got so intense. It was to the point where I, driving to the doctor's office, I ended up having to take a nap, a 10-minute drive to the doctor's office, and I had to take a nap 5 minutes into the drive just to be able to make it all the way without falling asleep in the car. And it was really scary. It was scary, not just, with being threatened with falling asleep at the wheel, but also being a single mom of a little kid and feeling like I barely had enough energy even to care for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that I had to somehow find the wherewithal to care for this little kid too, and somehow be a good mom to her.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of life's, if not the most important, one of life's most important jobs is being that mother. And out of that, there came an exploration. It sounds like an exploration of trying to find how to move past this, how to quote unquote solve the problem. And I wonder if you could just speak into that journey that you took to try and figure out how not to fall asleep at the wheel on a 10-minute drive.
Well, it started with going to doctors and asking a bazillion questions and honestly getting nowhere. And, I have always valued science and scientific inquiry and scientific validation. I love science, actually. I really love it. Um, but the medical science it didn't meet where I was. I got no answers there at all. And, you know, I not one to give up very easily, but also, faced with this little adorable child that really needed me. Well, I was not going to just say, that I wasn't just going to. I mean, although there was a moment where I considered shuttering the windows and just figuring out how to just, I don't know, go on disability,
Mm-hmm.
have groceries delivered to my door or something, just so that I didn't even have to go out into the world. There was a moment when I considered that. And then I considered what it was going to be like for her. So,
Take me deeper into that moment. Like what's going on for you? Like I would imagine that there's um almost a feeling like, and this is me putting words in your mouth, so please correct them. But like there's like almost a feeling of overwhelm and almost helplessness. This is what I would imagine I would be feeling. And so what was that moment like for you?
I felt totally, well, to be quite frank, I felt completely victimized by my own body. I felt like powerless over life and everything. because I honestly felt like I was doing absolutely everything I knew to do and nothing was working. Um, and I was, scouring the far reaches of the internet looking for things. And in that moment, I thought, I'm just gonna, I think I just have to give up. I'm gonna have to surrender to this, to being exhausted forever and just being barely present as a mom.
Yeah. So
And then I got cancer, and it turned out to be no big deal, right? But there was this moment when I received the cancer diagnosis, when it happened to be a particular variety of cancer that we had personal stories about in our family. It was like a big bugaboo, and there was a moment where I thought, oh my God, like, this is it. Like, all I have is this moment, and the rest of my life is going to be exhausted and maybe, in chemo or something like that. And I realized in that moment when I came face to face with that decision, like, do I just surrender to the cancer and the exhaustion and just let it take me, or maybe fight for something different? And in the dark hours, the wee hours of the morning, I realized that I had to fight. I had to find something. I was going to find a way.
yeah. So how did you how did you transform from, and perhaps it was just the power of being a mom and having this incredible responsibility on you, but from going from that place of like, I'm doing everything right. I'm doing everything right, and yet I'm exhausted. I now have this cancer diagnosis. Like how could you get from there to like, okay, I've got to beat this, or I've got to figure it out?
How did I get to that exact transition? I'm not really certain. I know that my experience of it was that I just kept trying things until I moved the needle a little bit. And then I moved the needle a little bit more, and then I moved the needle a little bit more and a little bit more, until finally I accrued enough energy to feel like I could really function and start stepping into more and more. Which now I look back on that and I realize that it could have been a lot easier, and I feel passionate about offering what I found to other people so that they don't have to spend so much time and like grinding effort to try to find the things.
Yeah. And what was it that moved the needle? And I just want to say here, like, I know a woman who is going through this exact thing right now, and I will be sending this to her. So what was it that moved the needle for you?
The very first needle was a scientific paper that came across my desk that said that loving kindness meditation daily can actually change the structure of your brain. And I was like, yes, that is what I need. I need to change the structure of my brain. My intuition was like, that's what's called for. And having that scientific validation for me was the key to allowing me the discipline to actually commit to it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. And after about after about 3 months, it made a significant difference in my experience, in my daily experience, in my general energy. And then I found other things like there's a particular ratio of omega-3 DHA to EPA, which helps to.
And that's omega-3 to omega-6, right?
They're both omega-3s, but they're two
Okay.
different omega-3
Okay.
varieties.
Yeah.
And it can reduce anxiety and inflammation more than any other variety. I found that works beautifully. And a whole bunch of other things.
I'm just curious, mostly for me, but like, what is that ratio? What are people looking for if they're looking for this thing?
Well, this is not one that I carry in my head, but it's a 60% ratio. And I'm gonna have to. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be able.
It's like 60% DHA or something like that.
Yeah, to
Cool.
EPA, something like that. It's one or the other. There's a couple of varieties that I usually recommend to people. There's one that's been filtered for mercury that I love in particular. Yeah, and then, later, the biggest needle for me, however, was treating trauma specifically.
Hmm.
There had been things for me that had been so sticky that, you know, I had been for counseling, therapy. I've done a lot of things, and there were a few things that were just so sticky and I just couldn't move past. And it was trauma specific therapies that really moved the needle in the biggest way for me.
Mm.
Diving into trauma, becoming trauma informed and actually trauma
Hmm.
skilled has been my dearest love and focus for a number of years now.
Mm. That's really beautiful. May I interject something here really
Yeah.
quickly? So, there are big T traumas, losing a parent, losing a best friend, car accident, all those things. But something that has really made this landed for me as I have become trauma informed, that like a trauma is like anything that is too much, too soon, or too fast for us. So, like, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, well, it was just this little thing. It's like, yeah. And it may have been too much, too soon, too fast. So I just want to encourage people out there to like honor their trauma almost. And I will pass the mic back to you because I don't need to be talking.
Well, yes, because and what I've come to realize is that trauma, the energy of trauma in the body behaves in a very different way from other things. It when people are trying to just like, for example, let's say somebody is wanting to step out on stage and do public speaking. For somebody who's not carrying trauma around that, you just kind of like you do it and it gets easier over time. But for somebody who's carrying trauma around that, you do it and then it gets harder over time. And it can make us feel crazy. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be getting easier.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, because of that, I think it's important that people understand that trauma is different. It needs to be treated differently, and you're not crazy.
And so talk to me a little bit about that. Like, I know I mentioned I was kind of on a bit of a timeline, but it looks like that's been pushed back. So we have some space here. And talk to me about that. And like, I know you kind of mentioned nervous system and moving things here. I would imagine that they are linked for you as they are for me. So just talk to me about treating that trauma so that things can get easier.
So my first experience with processing trauma specifically was with EMDR, which I
Mm-hmm.
and for a long time I, as a coach, I thought, well, trauma is outside of my wheelhouse. That needs to be for the therapist, for the psychologist, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. But what I started to discover is that people's blocks are almost always rooted in trauma. If we're
Mm-hmm.
having difficulty moving forward in anything, the block is almost always something that was overwhelming in the past that hasn't yet been processed all the way. And with the techniques that I have developed, it doesn't require a lot of the trauma processing techniques are very gentle, they're very subtle, they take a very long time. And for people who really just want a gentle technique and don't mind spending years doing it, that's fine. But there are ways to do it that are really fast and they're still very supportive of the nervous system. And this is very exciting to me as a sensitive person because I have always been a sensitive person. I'm sensitive to medications. I'm sensitive to body work. I have that kind of body that if I get deep tissue massage, I can suffer from that. Like instead of feeling better, I can feel worse, and sometimes for weeks or even months it has been. So I know what it's like to be in a very sensitive nervous system and how we can feel blown out, we can feel exhausted by the intensity of things. And sometimes processing trauma can be similar where for if we don't have the right supports, we have to deal with the intensity of trauma, and then need to take weeks to recover. When I was going through my somatic experiencing training, I found that to be true for me. I had to recover from every training. I had to take weeks to recover, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which to me felt well, kind of almost unacceptable as a single mom. Like I don't have time to take weeks to recover, right? So these techniques that I have been developing, they work fast and they're supportive of the nervous system, and it's really exciting to me, especially for sensitive people, because we can still move through this stuff really fast and with energy and verve on the other
Mm-hmm.
side of it.
And um, this will be leading a little bit, but like I know that a lot of people who, especially the people who have the big T traumas of sexual assault and things like that, when they think about healing this trauma, they are very afraid to go back and really look at it and possibly re-experience it. So I'm curious if your technique requires that.
It doesn't require talking about the event at all. I
Mm-hmm.
don't need to know anything at all about what happened. And it does require the willingness to feel intense sensations.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't require me to know anything. I don't need to know the story. We don't need to revisit it,
Mm-hmm.
anything like that.
Yeah, beautiful. And like perhaps I'm making too much of an assumption here, but it sounds like we work from very similar places. And I know when I work with this, like oftentimes my clients barely even need to look at it, right? Because it's the sensations, the feelings that you're actually dealing with rather than the event. Is that similar for you?
Absolutely true. Yes. And I hear the reflection a lot of times that it also opens up things. I've heard people refer to it as nonlinear because like you're dealing with one thing and you think you're just dealing with the one thing, but then all of a sudden all this other stuff opens up in
Mm-hmm.
life.
Yeah. Yeah, everything touches everything. You heal one thing, you heal other things, and it's such a beautiful thing. Um, and so I'm really curious because it sounds like you have a lot of knowledge and a big gift for people here. So how can people find you, work with you, um, and be able to heal these blocks that they have, these things that are, instead of getting easier as they do it from time to time, it gets harder from time to time? How can they start moving through this with you?
Well, what I would recommend is that people apply to work with me. They can go on to www.maggiespade.com to do that, to apply. And what I recommend is starting with the 5 session set because it takes you through the whole course, allows you to actually learn the skills to be able to do this kind of work for yourself
Mm,
to a large degree. So, but it really takes the whole 5 session arc to really give a good foundation for that.
yeah, beautiful. And is it just the website, or like should they contact you off of here if they don't want to go to the website?
You
Or
can DM me on Facebook Messenger. Yeah, that would
yeah,
be just fine.
amazing. And for those people who are scared, who are in that place where like things have to change. I know things have to change. And like, how do you have any words for them just to take that first step? How to take that first step?
Well, I want you to hear that you're not alone and that moving into transformation into healing is a very courageous step and it's worth it.
Mm, yeah. The beauty on the other side is incredible. And I think that you and like the radiance that you exude right now is probably a testament to that. And I'm sure looking at your clients, the same thing gets shone back at you, seeing the
Oh,
changes in them.
to see that open up in people is absolutely the juice of life. Absolutely adore it.
Absolutely. Well, it's been wonderful to chat with you, Maggie. I hope you
Thank
have
you,
a
Shaun.
wonderful day, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better.
Thank you very much, Shaun. Have a wonderful day.